Welcome back. I hope you're all feeling energized and ready to go because we've got some really special stuff planned this afternoon. Before we dive in, I want to share another message from one of our amazing partners, Stripe. Whether you're building subscription services, on-demand marketplaces, or e-commerce stores, Stripe can help you build and scale your online business. Now, a special treat for you guys as Sunrise Aotearoa participants, you're eligible for some special perks and benefits. To find out more, hunt down the Stripe crew. Noni, Asher, Will, and Andre are all floating around in Stripe shirts, so hunt them down. Otherwise, the details are on the website. So far, you've heard stories from Kiwis that are solving really hard problems. Our founders punch well above their weight in the world of deep tech and science, and we believe they're only just scratching the surface. Hard problems are worth solving, and we believe that Aotearoa is the best place in the world to do it. In our next session, we're going to be looking at the way that we train and educate our young people in pursuit of these hard problems. How can we raise a generation of innovators, creatives, builders, and makers? Who are the next generation of great founders going to be? And how do we support those founders with the wild hearts who will walk alongside them in pursuit of their mission? Our discussion with leading experts in education, technology, and diversity will tease apart these issues with you, our audience, in hope of sparking a debate and discussion about how we can solve these problems and about how founders are meant to react in that environment both today and into the future. This is an interactive session. We encourage you to ask as many questions as you'd like. Simply scan the QR code on the back of your lanyard. Now, with that being said, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome to the stage Vaughan Fergusson from the Pam Fergusson Charitable Trust. Give it
Kia ora tātou. Ko maungare te maunga. Ko waitamata te awa. No tamaki ahau. Ko Fergusson, toku whānau. Ko Vaughan, toku ingoa. No reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. And welcome back from the break. I'm Vaughan Fergusson, and it is my absolute pleasure and privilege to talk to you about something that's very dear to my heart. Retail point of sale. No, jokes, sold that. Software as a service. No, I mean, that's cool. What else? Startups. Yeah, kinda. We're kind of going to talk a bit about that. But what I would like to talk to you a bit about is my journey and my current focus. So I founded Vend 12 years ago, and that has turned into, and I'm very privileged to have been able to, I think, give back to the ecosystem. There's been a number of people who have been touched by that journey over the last 12 years, and still being touched, I hope. But 8 years ago, with my partner, Zoe, we co-founded a charitable trust. And we really wanted to replicate a gesture that my mother made for me when I was very young, me and my brothers. One day when I was around about 10 years old, she came home and she brought home a personal computer. And that may not seem very remarkable, but this was back in the dark ages of the 80s, and personal computers weren't very personal, and they were also very expensive. And what was even more remarkable was that my mum was a solo mum. She was a paraplegic, so a user of a wheelchair, and unemployed. And so she made this big bet. She thought computers, didn't understand them, nobody was really using them, but she had an idea that perhaps they could be the future. And so that gesture changed our lives. And so I thought, well, let's start something new that kind of repeats that gesture. I naively thought, you know what, we'll just teach kids how to code, problem solved. What we learned was you can teach any kid to code, right? But that's not the problem. The problem is there's a number of systematic barriers that prevent kids from following their dreams into a future which is going to be primarily driven by technology. So we started a charity in her name, the Pam Fergusson Charitable Trust, to see if we can give the next generation of kids the same opportunities that we had. Since then, we've expanded to be one of the few providers that teach teachers how to teach science and tech and history, strangely enough. We run mentorship programs for youth entering the industry, and we even opened a school camp in Raglan. We're called the Institute of Awesome, where groups can come and learn hands-on science and tech, and hopefully we're inspiring them to solve some of the real-world problems that are happening out there. But today, I'm joined by a panel of 3 incredible wahine toa, and we're going to talk about how we create the next generation of innovators, creators, and inventors in a far more equitable way. Before we get into it, we've got a very special Slido question for you all. So if you haven't jumped on Slido yet, pop it up on your phone, and go to slido.com and use the code SUNRISE. And what we want to hear from you is what was or is, in one word, maybe 2 if you break the rules slightly, your experience with the education system. And then we'll let you answer that over the next few minutes, and then we'll make Slido available to you just to ask general Q&A as we go. You may have also noticed, hopefully on your seat, there was a little roll of stickers and a pen. Hold on to those. There'll be an activity in class later. So, welcome to second period. I'm Mr. Fergusson, and this is Ecosystems 201. If this is not the lecture you thought you were in, you're in the wrong theatre. No joke, there is only one theatre. This is the lecture you're supposed to be in, and hopefully it's not going to be a lecture. But do sit up, put your pencils down for now. You can keep your phones. And this is what we're going to cover today. So you're doing your pop quiz right now. And then shortly, I'll introduce our guest speakers, and we're going to cover roughly 3 topics, if we can stick to them. First of all, what is the education system and how is it changing? Next, why should we care? It's probably been some time since we were all at school. And then lastly, what can we do, and that's the royal we, to help accelerate change and benefit from that change too. So remember, your first task is we want to hear about your experience with education. But without further ado, I'm going to welcome my friends to the stage, and instead of being the usual, I think, boring panel, or even a manel, we're going to have 3 awesome wahine toa to lead this conversation. So please welcome Alliv Samson, who's the COO and co-founder of Kami. Julia Arnott-NeeNee, who is the CEO and co-founder of Fibre, Fale. And lastly, and definitely not least, because I'm biased, is Zoe Timbrell, the co-founder and CEO of the Pam Fergusson Charitable Trust. Who is, I must disclose, who is also my partner in crime, love and life. So, what we thought we're going to do. Yeah, you all ready for this?
You're all ready for this?
We thought we'd do something a little bit different. So we've given each of our panelists roughly 3 or 4, maybe 5 minutes to do kind of like a mini TED Talk about them and their passion and why they care so much about the space. But for licensing reasons, we can't call it a TED Talk. So we thought we'd call it an Ed Talk. And so we don't have a giant red spot either, but I noticed there's a little X there. So that'll be our EdX. Oh yeah, we're repping the red on the stage already. Yes. So Alliv, perhaps if we start with you, if you kick us off for 3 or 4 minutes about your passion in education.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Alliv, one of the co-founders of edtech startup Kami. My love for education started in a small province in the Philippines where I grew up. But let's be honest, it's not all love. As millions of school kids encounter daily hardships, and this is basically what education looks like for me growing up. However, the classroom is also our safe space for us to learn, explore, and dream that it will hopefully be our golden ticket out of poverty. Growing up, I have learned two vital things that helped me in my entrepreneurial journey: being resourceful and creative. I have learned to make the best of what I have and look at the world differently, especially in problem solving and building things. As an immigrant in New Zealand, I am very thankful for what I have right now. During my university days, my education was not just bounded within the lecture theaters. I spent a lot of my time doing all kinds of side hustles for me to learn and understand and develop my skills. Fast forward 2013, I have found my calling. I want to build something. This is our edtech startup, Cami, an all-in-one learning platform. And this is where Cami is now. With minimal capital raised and a fairly small team, we have grown to over 35 million users in 180 countries, with US as our biggest market. 9 in 10 American schools use Cami every single day. I am proud to share some of these badges that our awesome team have achieved so far, in hopes that some of you innovators and creatives in this room will hopefully look into education. Yes, education isn't sexy, but it's a necessity. We have decades of catching up to do to help build a better education system here and overseas. Meet my awesome co-founders, Bob, Hinji, and Jordan. Basically, we're the crazy ones who ventured into this unknown world of edtech. What keeps us going, though, is knowing that Cami saves teachers a lot of time each day. We help empower students, we help improve teacher and student performance, and we help schools and districts save money and help improve the way that the classroom is working, while also helping the environment by keeping it more sustainable and more flexible. All of these while also helping build a business that will help our economy and give back to the community. I just want to showcase our group of dreamers. We call ourselves the Chameleons. We are passionate about building the future of education, and we each give our individual flares that makes up the Cami magic. A lot of our team members are actually ex-educators. They're on a mission to teach other educators, not just about Cami, but also helping them alleviate their daily struggles. This is what the US classroom looks like, or one of its version. The pandemic has fast-tracked years of innovation and change that led us where we are right now. You basically cannot stop progress. You help build it. Now is when the teachers are fighting to take back their power. Now is when the students yearn for a better system of learning. Cami is the blackboard and pen and paper in the classroom. We are breaking the four walls and help save teachers in their daily frustrations so that they can do their best for their students. I am here in front of you as an advocate of EdTech because we have decades of catching up to do, and we need more Kiwi innovators and creatives to help build that future of education. And hopefully this panel will help us guide you in that direction.
One up. I don't know who woke up cold this morning, but I definitely did. So we're going to do a little bit of an interactive exercise, and if you are of Pacific descent or been to a Pacific community event, you'll know what I'm talking about. So we're going to start with putting our hands together. Everyone put your hands together. We're going to rub them, rub them, rub them, rub them. This is called mili, 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 mili. And when I say patia, you go clap, okay? Patia, patia. Hey, look, Vaughan, we don't need you no more. I got this. Okay, and when I say lua pati, you go clap, clap, all right? Lua pati, lua pati. When I say hey, hey, you say ho. Hey, hey, ho. Hey, hey, ho. All right, we're going to test this out. Let's go. Mili, 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 mili. Patia, patia, lua pati, lua pati. Hey, hey. Hey, well done. Here we go. Introduction to Pacific 101. Talofa lava. My name is Julia Arnott-NeeNee, and I do need this clicker now. And I am of Samoan descent. I hail from the villages of Lalomanu and Tulaele and Apia, of Shanghai in China, and of Lincolnshire in England. And what that means is, no, you cannot put me in a box. I am a box maker, not a box filler. Copyright. That is mine. Do not take that away from me. I joined the tech industry when I was 24 years old. I went and worked for HP as a strategic planner in London. Not HP Harry Potter, not HP Boys either, and not HP Source. That one really confused me. I don't know how that ended up being a thing. But anyway, and I spent some time working in both London and in California. And one of the things that I found most interesting is I held this pedestal up about working in tech and what it meant to work in tech. I thought I'd made it. I cracked 6 figures really early on, and I was like, this is meant to feel amazing. And really what I felt is I felt like if you climbed the top of Mount Everest, and I have not done this, but I was thinking, if you climbed the top of Mount Everest and you got to the top and it was like a really misty day and you couldn't see anything and there was no big view and you didn't get that big euphoric feeling, that's what it felt like for me. I'd been climbing and climbing and climbing, and I thought I'd feel something, and I got to the top and I felt nothing. I mean, I did get to take my mum to Italy for her birthday, so that was pretty cool, but internally I didn't feel anything. So I wanted to talk about what drives me and what's driven my entrepreneurial journey and where I am today now. So justice and honesty, that's a big part for me. I'm probably too honest. That's got me into a bit of trouble. But for me, it's directly connected to be able to stand up for justice, is the need to be honest. People in Tautua. Tautua means service. So I'm inherently driven to serve my community and to serve people. And futures and growth. I love learning. I really care about learning, and I really care about where we're going into the future and who's learning and who's dictating and controlling the direction of the future. So that led me to a pivotal moment, and I've got this slide up for a reason. It wasn't a mistake. I'm going to show you something I've never shown anyone in a talk before, and I really hope this is a safe space. I'm assuming that, because all of those aspects of getting into tech, feeling nothing, and then going back to what drives me, my values, led me to this point. Again, be kind, and look, if you need to take a photo, that's fine. I'll deal with it later on. I go to my therapist. So I did what any normal young person did, and I emailed the Prime Minister on LinkedIn, and you can read it. It's pretty embarrassing. Like, I don't even talk like this. Like, what is this? Good morning. If I may call you Jacinda. Like, oh my God. Like, what am I doing? And and I started this big yarn, and I was like, what are you doing to protect everyone? What are you doing with the forced industrial revolution? What are you doing with AI and humanity, job displacement? What are you doing for those that are most at risk of being left behind? I was like real pumped. It was like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning in London. I was like, yeah, woohoo, let's go. And I met her in person, and I said to her, I was like, look, I got to tell you something. She's like, who are you? And I said, you have left me on red, on scene, for the longest anyone has ever left me on scene for. And she's like, who are you? And then she's like, oh, LinkedIn. Yeah, it's the only one I don't check. And I'm like, bet you tell everyone that. So anyway, so this really is what was a pivotal moment in my entrepreneurial journey, was there was this clash between profession and purpose. I wasn't feeling anything. I wasn't like feeling as though I was actually part of a bigger purpose. And so I did something about it, and this was the start of me doing something about it. So what do I do now? So I came home in February 2020, just before COVID hit. I stopped by Ghana, spent some time at an entrepreneurs and training school, and I was really searching for a way to converge both purpose and profession, and also be very place-based. So be very intentional about where I was and who I was serving. And what that's led to is the creation of Fibre. Fale is a purpose-led organisation that is built around wanting to see Pacific people having digital equity, being confident in pursuing pathways in digital technologies, and seeing themselves as future creators and controllers. It's not enough for me that we start to push this pipeline of incredible, precious human beings into the Xeros, the Salesforce, and AWS. That's not enough. That's not going to change the system for us to contribute to a white man's dream. What's really going to change the system is if we build and we create our own dreams and our own entities. And that's what we're all about supporting. And the problem, and this is what we're going to talk about today, is the conversation around representation of technology is often really narrowly held around pipeline. It's never brought back into inequity, into poverty, and into colonization, because that's an uncomfortable conversation to industry to have. So this is what we're working on solving at the moment. But the big piece I wanted to leave you with today is, as leaders of this COPAP are on a mission to deliver transformational change, that we know that the success of an intervention depends on the interior condition of the intervener. So it's not about what we do or how we do it, but the inner place in which we operate from. And the question that I want you to sit with is, when you identify a wicked problem that impacts certain communities, are you best placed to solve it? Or is the community that it impacts the most, is it more important that we build power on the margins and they solve the problems that most impact the community themselves? But join our village. So go check us out, fibrefale.com, Fibrefale on all the handles and things. And I'm really excited to pass over to Zoe. Woo.
Kia ora koutou. When Vaughan suggested that we get a chance to do a TED Talk, I was really excited because he's actually done two, and I'm never asked to do them. Because like most people that have met me know, limiting my speeches down to a short period of time is not my strong suit. So we're going to try today though. So if I talk really fast, go back and watch the video and slow it down later. Kia ora koutou. Ko prongia te maunga te rune taku nāko. Ko waipa te awa e mahia nei aku maharahara. E tipu aki au ke kirikiri roa. Nor Ireland, nor Scotland, nor England, nor Wales, nor Ghana, taku o oku tipuna. Ko tangata tiriti aho. Ko Zoe Timbrell toku ingoa. Ko tēnei taku mihi ki ngā tangata whenua o te rohi nei. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnara tātou katoa. So, you've heard a lot from Vaughan. 8 years ago, I co-founded a charity with him to help every Kiwi kid become an innovator and inventor. And wow, what a journey it has been, from creating an app to help democratize access to tech experts for schools, to putting out-of-this-world technology like mind control and robotics into the hands of our young people to have a tutu. We are on a mission to ensure all young people in Aotearoa are equipped with solutions to solve some of the massive trash fire problems that they are due to inherit. And to go further than that and help them realize the technology-enabled utopian future that we have all been promised by so many science fiction writers and movie directors. You know that one where we're all like dressed up in our ethically sourced, sustainably made silver lycra suits, jacked into the metaverse. Yeah. For our actual nirvana, we need 3 things. Tahi. We need everyone's identity to be celebrated and affirmed. Rua, social connection and cohesiveness. And toru, empowered solutionists who can dream up radical change. It's not too much to ask, right? We've got a room full of solutionists here. But to make this happen, our knowledge seekers require a different education system. A system that focuses on the 3 C's of thinking. Critical thinking. Because with so much misinformation and truth questioning going on in the world right now, how do we know what's real and what's right? Creative thinking, as cookie-cutter assembly line brains cannot think radically. And computational thinking, to avoid an awkward future with our robot overlords. Or worse, a future fueled by the vision of a few privileged people in their ivory towers. The future of learning needs to shift. Now. We need radical transformation, not just tinkering around the edges of a system that is designed for the past. We need to decolonize a racist education system and acknowledge that technology literacy is a must-have for all. It is not an optional subject. Today, I want you to focus on 2 ideas. 2 simple thought exercises that, if you do it right, are going to transform your lives. I promise you. And they will transform the lives of those around you. Number 1, acknowledging your privilege by taking stock of what it is you previously took for granted. So I'm going to kick it off with a couple for you to try, and then later on you can think of some more for yourself. Do you have more than 1 pair of shoes? Has anyone in your family gone to university or finished high school? Do your favorite video games or movies have a lead character that is the same race and gender as you? Privilege adds up, and having it and not having it can be like starting a race so much further behind that it doesn't matter if you're Usain Bolt, because the chance of winning is almost negligible. Number 2, work out your biases and then snap out of them. Unconscious bias, like the name suggests, happens outside our conscious mind, but that does not mean we cannot change it. Do the work and start to identify yours. They're our social stereotypes, our social and identity groups. See how it affects who you hire, how you decide, you're a great fit round here. Because as the great Taika Waititi put it, you don't have to be a full-on racist. Even being a little bit racist is enough. We know that technology is a reflection of those that make it. And as we move forward into this tech-enabled, fingers crossed, utopian future, who do you think should be creating it? Ka puruha, ka hau te rangatahi. As the old net withers, another is remade. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou katoa.
Thank you, team. Now we can, now that the easy bit's over, we can relax a bit and have a bit of a chat about education. But I thought, because everybody's probably interested to see the word cloud, can we throw that up? Do I need to press something, or if I click my fingers?
Try again.
Hey, school's not dismissed, fam. Where you going?
What do we make of this? Ooh, look at that, right smack bang in the middle, uninspiring. I hope that's not our talk.
Who invited MOE?
It's how it works. The biggest word is because more than one person said it. And it makes the word bigger, traditionally.
Stressful, irrelevant, traditional, privileged.
Rigid, boring, irrelevant.
I was going to say that I'm hoping the word cloud captures all of our joy and trauma, but it seems
This
to be...
must have been pre-Cami, eh?
Seems
This
to be
is
mostly
the trauma, yeah.
Does this line up with all your experiences with education, both when you were kind of in it and where we are now?
So, working in the education space is interesting, right? Because it's not my experience of education at all. I was like straight down the middle, the perfect person to be in the education system. I was like teacher's pet, high achiever at a school that had mostly low achievers, where they like really privileged the high achievers because of the difference. I was at a Desau 1 school in Kirikiriroa. And so I'm really conscious of my experience in the education system as a juxtaposition to most others, because I think often when you're having a positive experience, it can blind you to everyone else's. And so this is where we focus most of our work now, is like, not that the system's broken for me, but I'm a very small minority, and so we shouldn't keep a system that just works for me. It's not.
I was the opposite to you. I got told off so much. And like in my reports, it was always, Julia is struggling to manage her impulsivity. And I didn't know what impulsivity means. I could have just said she's loud, but clearly that was not articulate enough. So one of the interesting things about my journey in the education system is my mum, a sole parent, put me through a private school down in Aotearoa in Christchurch. And if you know Christchurch, it's falls under the racist spectrum pretty far over this side, yes. And so an all-girls private school in Christchurch, you can kind of imagine I was one of 3 brown people in the whole school. So I had things like, people used to say that I stole their lunches, people used to say I used to push them around, people openly said to me, if you were white, we wouldn't have done this. So I had a really interesting relationship with that school, and at the same time, it was like excellence was the benchmark. There was nothing less than that, but equally, there was nothing less than the personality that would mirror what excellence looks like. So again, it was really, really narrow. So I really resonate with that sort of conversation about limited, narrow, and rigid. That was definitely some of my experiences.
Yeah, how about you, Alliv?
I have a different experience. Growing up, not here in New Zealand, growing up in the Philippines, the system is quite different. If you do well in class, you're great. If not, whatever. But I kind of fell in both. When I was in elementary, I was doing so well. I memorized everything on the book, which is awesome. But again, I felt that it wasn't enough for me to, think of my future and what would that future look like. So when I was in high school, I started dropping that and just venturing into different things. I skipped a lot of classes and just stayed at home, went to like a computer station. You pay like a couple of pesos per hour, learn how to do HTML, CSS. That was awesome. This was like MySpace era for those who are young. That's like the start, Blogspot, all these things. And that's how I started to realize that, hey, there's a thing called internet and I can do stuff even though I'm here and I can talk to people overseas or build something out of nothing. So that inspired me to continue looking into technology. But again, there wasn't a lot of support. So when I started my university days in the Philippines, I got into software. But again, there wasn't a lot of female in the classroom, and it wasn't quite encouraging. It was like the main word, uninspiring to be at. So I switched, my focus when I moved here in New Zealand, and I kind of regret it. I should have continued on, powered through technology. But I still continued my passion with technology. So while I was doing uni here, I was, making some side hustle, making money out of making websites and everything else. So I do wish that there were more support, especially for young women, to want to venture into technology. That hey, this is a great path for you as well, and this is what you should follow. That's my experience.
Yeah. Well, mine was that classic tech. Found a story which is, high school dropped out of university twice, and I still made it, which goes to show how much fucking privilege I had going through the system.
Dropped out of more than one high school too.
Yeah, well, okay, I dropped out multiple times.
Shame.
Yeah.
So we're talking about education and in quotes, the education system as a thing. And it's quite a big, gnarly topic, and if we try and wrap our arms around it, what is the education system? Like in my head, it's this thing that's was set up and has been around for 100 years, probably hasn't changed too much. It was a long time since I last dropped out. So what is it like today? How would you all think about the education system? Like, what is it?
So I guess we all think of the formal education system with primary, high school, tertiary, but I think in kind of a modern sense, education is in the hands of the knowledge seeker, right? So even for young people, our daughter, she decided she wants to learn watercolors, so I took her to the store and she's like, great, I'm going to go watch a whole lot of YouTube videos and learn how to do that, even though she's taking art at school. So her natural inclination now is to learn in a digital sense, because anything that you want to know, anything. I mean, if someone can think of something you can't learn off the internet, I'd love to hear it, because we should probably make a podcast about it. But the traditional education system is very formal, government-funded, and we're very privileged in this country to have access to a world-class education system for free for up to the end of first-year tertiary study. There are many places in the world where they don't have access to what we have. And we have one of the most advanced, if not the most advanced, curriculum-designed curriculum documents in the world as well. We have quite an open curriculum. I think where a lot of stuff falls down is where education meets HR and meets like our childcare requirements of parents and our work requirements to have kids looked after for these certain periods of the day. And so, like, I get to meet the most incredible educators in the education system every day, but what they all get as frustrated by the system of, like we talk about it, like education is often thought about as assessment. So when we think of education today, we think of what are your NCEA results, what are our literacy and numeracy results. But that's not education, that's external people assessing a normative value across an entire population. That's got nothing to do with the individual journey of each of our rangatahi or tamariki or even ourselves as adult learners. And one area that I think is huge for the education system is thinking about yourselves, because every one of you in this room, over the rest of your life, is going to have to re-educate yourself to do something completely different, I'm sorry to break this to you, than what you think you're going to be doing right now. Because we know that that future is so disrupted that there's no way what you're doing today you'll be doing in 20 years' time. So how are you going to be educated? Like, what's the system that sits around your journey and how you get there? So I think the education system is very wide now, more than what we think about.
Yeah, and perhaps, Alliv, you could talk to us about the future of the classroom. Like, COVID was just an amazing experiment into a shift to digital learning, and it sounds like it was an awesome thing. In many ways it was. For a lot of our communities, it was terrible. But there is still this, I think we can all understand that a move to digital learning, like Zoe was describing there, having it on-demand learning is a great thing. What are you seeing, both here in Aotearoa, but also overseas? Like, who's doing it well?
I think right now we're quite biased because we see the US school system quite really well, and we've seen it progress through the years because we've been doing this for almost a decade now. And yes, the pandemic boosted that progress in a good way because, prior to that, nobody is paying so much attention. Like, kids are still stuck in the four walls of a classroom, teacher in front pointing, but it hasn't been developed for many, many years. And we've learned that, well, everybody learned that there has to be something that could have been done in terms of making it more flexible and giving back that power to the teacher so that they can do the teaching and not just being stuck in front of the classroom. For the students, they're more aware of what technology can help with their learning. So they want to do more with it. They're actually fast learners. And for us here in New Zealand, we need to look into that as well. Like, what can we see in other countries that they're doing that helps move education forward in terms of technology and apply it in our classrooms? I still think we're still behind because there's not a lot of conversation that's happening within our country. There needs to be more conversation about it so that we can help figure out, okay, what's the biggest problem a teacher encounters every day? What can we do as innovators to help solve it? Basic problems that we can help solve and, grow from that and progress from that. But I think right now it's great to be in a room full of innovators because now is the time to think about it and see, okay, what are those that we can help solve and do better? Yeah.
Maybe if we shift gears a bit and start thinking about, because we're all very passionate about education, and I think everybody's had a lived experience of education, but why should we care? Like, is it about just making sure that the next generation have a good go at it? Us as parents, we want our kids to have the best. But why should everybody in this room care passionately about education? And I've got a loaded question here. So we always think about the education system as a means to create people with skills, for accountants and lawyers and, hypothetically, technologies and AI is going to replace a lot of these roles.
They need to be taught too.
Yeah. But, how is the pipeline broken? Like, are we trying to create the wrong cookie cutter fits for the world that, the next generation are going to inherit? Why should we care?
The pipeline's definitely broken. That's baseline, benchmark, definitely broken. Even the term pipeline is so narrow and mechanical around who we are as people. We're multifaceted, flawed human beings. And again, going back to these sort of questions around the education system, what is it, what does it look like, what could it be versus what is it now? I always want to remind us that education and what we're talking about is also equity, basic access to things that, again, as Zoe sort of eloquently articulated, there are some of us that are starting at one starting point and some of us that are starting at very different starting points. And to give an example that, like during COVID lockdown, my co-founder and an amazing human being, Aotearoa, started up this amazing initiative called Digital Tour, which was supported by the Fergusson Trust. Aha, plug. And she was literally plugging the whole of devices, the need for devices. MOE sent out thousands of laptops to decile 10 schools during lockdown. Make it make sense, fam. Make it make sense. The need is not at decile 10 schools. The need was coming out of South Auckland, Porirua, all across the motu, and there was literally students that were either having to use cell phones and like planned cell phones to write essays. There were students hanging outside of McDonald's that had to be moved on during incredibly dangerous times, outside of libraries, and not just students from like high schools and from universities, from primary schools. This was across the, like students weren't able to access the education system because of the oversight that we had around the digital divide. And MOE did not help itself in that moment, and there's an awesome question around what can the government and MOE do better. I mean, look, basic data would be great around where is the need, I think.
But I think even just riffing on that, if I may jump in, even further than that, within that project, what it showed was, because I worked with MOE around that stuff too, that they thought they were doing a great job from the data that they got, but until we start unpacking how we interact with our education system, like students got asked, do you have a device at home? And when you think about stuff in different kind of cultural contexts, and you think about being a bit whakamā, or like the pride that comes with saying, we don't want you to say that you don't have it, because we provide for you like the best that we can. And so, or you do have a device, you've got a phone, and your siblings all share that phone. And so the answer is yes, there's a device in those homes. And when Eti's charity started, she had a completely different line into communities that the schools didn't have, because they didn't have the right cultural responsiveness in terms of their interaction with those communities. And so I would say within that, it's not just like that the system's broken, it's that interaction of how are the edges, how do schools or whoever our educators are communicate with whānau, with iwi, with business. Like how do we start breaking down the barriers to make education connected within that space? And that, to that question too, if I jump in there, like what's the MOE doing? The MOE does amazing things. Like I'm big supporters of their like people on the ground who are doing the hard mahi that care deeply, but the whole system doesn't serve anyone. It doesn't serve the people in MOE, it doesn't serve the principals, it doesn't serve the students. It's all a system, right? And so unless you have the right leadership in that system, it's going to be broken. And right now, leadership in schools is board of trustees, and that's at threat across the country at the moment from people that understand where power in systems currently sits. So if you have kids, check who's going, board of trustees and stuff's happening now. Those people in that position of power are the bosses of our principals. They make the decisions about what happens in a school. It doesn't get dictated from the MOE on a day-to-day way. Yes, I could go on that for hours, so stop there.
I didn't wear my glasses, so I'm not looking at you, sorry. I'm looking at the screen trying to read the questions.
What's your question?
Can I go back to the pipeline point though,
Sure.
really quickly? Because the conversation the industry has about pipeline around where's talent, where are Māori and Pacific, we want Māori and Pacific, all these sorts of conversation, and it's like, well, you're having a conversation that's in a silo. You're not having a conversation that starts back to, again, the root cause or going back to inequities that already exist that perpetuate the problem that we're seeing in terms of lack of representation in the industry. Those two pieces are from one same sentence and one same conversation about pipeline, but the conversation that the industry ends up having is, where are they? We're not seeing them coming out of uni. Where are they? What's wrong? And it's like, well, again, broadening the horizons and lifting the level of consciousness and awareness around this will actually create different levels of understanding. And you can't get a pool unless you've created the pool.
Yeah, and there's people who want to swim in it too, right? Like, we find we do these incredible projects and programs with young people. They're still not making those decisions to go into it because they don't want to come work in your workplace. Like, they don't see themselves there. And when they are there, it's trying to make them someone they're not, rather than celebrating who they are. And if we're talking about university as the way that you're getting your talent pipeline, you've already got a problem, because for so many young people that are born into poverty, they don't have the luxury or the privilege of making that choice. The most young people that dropped out of school during COVID were Year 13 Pacifica women who could not stay at school because they became the breadwinners for their whānau, the caregivers for their younger brothers and sisters and their extended whānau. It's not because they're not incredibly talented. They're the people I want building the healthcare robot of the future, because they've got the best damn values that I've ever seen, but they are not ever going to be in your talent pipeline if your talent pipeline sits at you need a university degree, because they don't go there. That's not their, they're in a system, and until we start focusing on that, we're not going to get that talent. We're not going to get those ideas. Women also don't traditionally do startups, because for young women, our societal kind of setup is that young women are expected to be less risk averse because they may have whānau. Young men get a lot more freedom in our basic unconscious bias to be entrepreneurs and try more stuff. We have to constantly challenge, like, what are we asking our daughters or our sons to do? How much space do you give them as young people? How much space is created around them for risk, for trying things, and how much, we should be paying young people to do stuff with us, allowing people that are privileged to do it, like, because they can. Yeah, right.
Alliv, what do you think? We're on one.
Julia,
we're definitely on one.
So,
we are on
we
one
can
over
talk
here.
about this later.
Looking back at it, it's a lot of basic needs in terms of, the school and the students and the teachers that hasn't been solved yet. But this is a very important conversation, because, like us, everybody here in this auditorium, we are building something. We are building businesses. What can we do ourselves to help fix that? And for example, what we do at CAMI, we just don't look at someone's CV based on their grades or their academic achievements. To be honest, most of our engineering hire, they're all self-taught. They don't need a degree. All they need is the willpower to learn and actually, engage with the product and, produce amazing things. So that's key things that we look for. And for us, it's not just education around the classroom. Education system for us continues on in our workplace. Mm-hmm. So as a startup, even though we're 90 people, some people say it's no longer a startup, but for us it is, because the way that we think and the way that we interact with each other, it's daily learning, daily education of understanding how we move forward and how we do things. Mm-hmm. So that for us is very important. And again, it roots back to the start, like being inside a classroom. What can we do ourselves to help alleviate those issues? And what can we do now as managers or business owners or co-founders to change that system, to change that thinking as well? And how do we encourage others who are not successful before, and how can we inspire them to do better as well. So,
And just to build on that, during COVID lockdown, Cami donated $50,000 to Digital Tour so that 100 learners got new devices. So whilst they benefited from the digitization, they also made a commitment to supporting digital equity as well.
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
it
awesome.
it wasn't the co-founders' decision ourselves. It's actually the whole team's decision, and we decided to give Cami license for free for New Zealand schools because we want to give back, and it's also the thought that, look, everything's so behind right now here in New Zealand. We have to do something, and I know there's so much more we can do, but we got to start somewhere.
That's an awesome start, and that really speaks to what I see as one of the core problems, is that we have this fairly rigid system that follows our young people and people who are re-educating through to a point. But I'm also hearing, speaking to the folks in the room, one of the problems that a lot of us want to solve is that, we want talent, the talent thing. And I hear it all the time. It's like, we want talent, where's the talent? And the talent's everywhere. But there's usually a follow-on to that. It's like, we want talent that comes with 5 years of experience and, has this degree. And so that's where the gap is. It's like, how do you give young people the opportunity to get the experience? That feels like where there's that divide, that leap that's too far. So what are some of the things, so one of the questions that came up before, and I'll paraphrase it because I can't see it, is, maybe in order to get good results, you need to be able to measure stuff. And, we have NCEA, and we've got SAT scores, and we've got all these measures, these traditional measures of the education system. Are we measuring, they're probably very important, but are we measuring the wrong things? How do we get a full picture of the young people?
Why do we need to measure that anyway? Assessment's fascinating, right? The coolest school, I'm going to shout out to Vaughan's old school. One of the coolest schools I've seen recently is Edgewater.
One of my old schools.
One of his old schools. Is Edgewater College. And they are so cool. And they have completely switched up how they're doing learning. They have, for at least one of their junior stream classes, thrown out all the traditional subjects, have project-based learning, have split it into 4 quadrants of knowledge seeking, innovation, cultural affirming practice, and they have, with that shift, thrown out what traditional assessment looks like as well. Because you can't, when you're doing project-based learning that's really connected to the community and you're working collectively, assessing an individual seems a bit whack. But you can absolutely see their learning, and you put that back in the hands of the learners, and you collect evidence of learning. And we think about it now in terms of progressions. What's the gate that you have to be able to open to walk through to the next paddock of knowledge? In a very Kiwi sense, that's how we talk about it. Rather than assessment, because at the moment, I think we've got students here somewhere, yeah? Hey students, you're gonna sit a test for a unit of work, and you're gonna maybe, I hope, get over, you guys don't even, you maybe get an achieved, hopefully a merit, but there's still knowledge there that you don't have, right? But then that's it. That assessment has nothing to do with supporting your learning in that subject. That has everything to do with someone else checking whether their teachers are doing a good job of teaching. So that one of the huge spaces that we're seeing in EdTech is this assessment for learning rather than assessment of learning. And the digitization of the education system is that self-led, how do I use different assessment ways that I can, it's you build something, it's not working. You test it, you test it, you test it. How do you bring that idea of a lot of tech kind of quick processes into the education system. And that's where we're seeing lots of growth, assessment for learning, not of learning. Yeah, and that's huge, right? So I think if people want to build that stuff, that's cool stuff to build.
I'd also like to add that, usually we talked about this conversation about talent, and even the question that was posed, is Aotearoa New Zealand ready? Readiness, that's a really interesting question, and I wonder how many of you as founders or as sort of, especially people in culture peeps, HR peeps inside of tech, actually ask yourselves, are we safe enough to support Pacific and Māori and females and gender diverse and those that are not part of the homogeneous group? Are we actually ready? Have we done our work, our inner work, to be able to support these people to thrive. And by support, I'm not meaning the condescending term of support, but so that when they walk into your four walls, into your Fale, that it is actually safe enough for them to be their whole selves. Because this terminology of like bring your whole self to work, that is total, from my lived experience, that is total crap. I am always assessing a space as to how much I can bring of myself. I'm always calculating and playing the mental Olympics in my head as to what I wear, as to what I say, as to where to dial up, to dial down, because of what I'm trying to figure out about the space and the people that have built those four walls. So that conversation about ready and this talent, and where is the talent, it's so focused on the individual, but what about the soil in which you're responsible for? What can you do? What is the inner work that you can do that then flows all the way through into the kind of structure and entity that you create and the values that are driving that?
And that's really cool, because some of the stuff that
Yo,
gets
whoever
used
said
in,
that, thank you.
The stuff that gets used in our education system in a digital sense is being, and it's true in a lot of our other technology spaces, isn't being built by people with the lived experience here. And so when we think about importing in those systems in, and you can ask any school in the country, are you a Microsoft school or a Google school? And they'll have an answer for that. But those systems were not designed with the people from Aotearoa in mind, and they have really limiting factors to them. You know, their privacy is massive for them, so you can't access that information as a parent. So how, when we talk about the stuff of like needing parents to feel included in planning, like how does that work when we have all our education software designed offshore? Which is why it's so cool that we have people like Kami and things like Kama that are designed here for the issues that our teachers in Aotearoa, not just issues, but like, you know, like the aspirations, like how do we think of this new way of teaching and learning, like project-based, student-led, how does that play out in a classroom, because we know it'll be digital, like what, it has all going to be, because it's like, this taking the young person out of the four walls of school and saying learning happens around a young person, how does that even play out in a system where so much data is required for the funding of that, like...
There were some great questions in there about involving parents. Perhaps, Alliv, you could talk to, there's helping parents engage in the classroom online, but also how do we get parents more involved, in a non-digital way?
In a non-digital. I've seen some other questions as well specific to that, but in terms of the parents, that's the thing, right? Like, you gotta have an open communication within the school, the parents, and the students, because learning doesn't stop outside of the school. It continues on in a home and everywhere you go. So if the parents are also aware of what's happening and what's gonna happen next, and also part of that conversation, it will help this whole progress work better. I've seen some questions about, I'm paraphrasing as well, my eyesight's not that good, the issues that, schools encounter.
Here we go, Giant.
Having digitized in the classroom. Unfortunately, we haven't seen a lot of issues just yet because we haven't implemented it and had a very thorough conversation about technology in the classroom. And not just here in New Zealand, but overseas as well. So right now, the basic needs to establish a good technology in the classroom hasn't been solved. So we'll get there somehow, but right now we'll start having all these conversations, having all these feedback from both the students, the teachers, the parents, the admin, and try to fit it into what works, not just for the budgets or the ministry or anything. It's all about the teachers and the students, what works for them. And that's how we solve all these issues that may come up.
And one thing on the parents, I get this pushback from teachers a lot. You have to trust that teachers are professionals. And as parents, we see our young people engaging with technology at home. And they engage with it at home in a completely different way than they engage with it in a classroom with a teacher that's been trained in pedagogy, that knows how to use it as a tool for the classroom. And we worry about our kids using technology because we think they're doing what they do at home with it in a classroom sense. But great digital teaching is not like, it's completely different. And our young people, But for young people that are having problems with it in class, they're going to be having problems with technology or without it. That's an engagement issue. But we should, I think really carefully around making judgments of like thinking that the games or play-based learning in school is the same as like when my son's playing Valorant at home. It's not, even though he is learning a lot then. So technology in schools, like it's a whole new way of thinking for our young people, but they need it because I couldn't imagine any one of you going to work and not using your laptop. And being like, no, sorry, you can't have that. You can only have a pad and paper and this phone plugged into the wall. Yeah.
What we might move to our exercise.
That question from Daniel was hectic. That is so good.
So chaotic.
It's
I
a
love
huge
it.
issue, right? Because how are we going to get teachers to teach software development if they're not even paid as much as a junior software developer?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So everyone this election, make sure that your local MP is campaigning for more money to go into the education sector. It's already like the second largest budget line, but it needs more. So we need to pay teachers and nurses and firemen more.
I'm loving all the anonymous questions from...
It's cool that they hacked the system.
From Anon. When I was a kid at school, my teacher asked me who was my favourite poet, and I said, it's Anon. Because there were a lot of poems that were anonymous in the book. I thought, wow, this Anon is really amazing. All right, now, so have you got your roll of stickers? Yeah, and have you all got a pen? Hopefully. All right, now, I'm going to, if I press this, we'll bring up some instructions.
Yeah. And
Here
the
we go.
house lights up.
We're going to think about how we value each other and our young people as a complete package, like, stepping away from LinkedIn and the stuff that you would put on your CV. We've all got life skills. For example, you might be a master meme maker, a Lego master. I'm wearing Lego shoes today. I don't know if anybody's noticed. They're not physically made out of Lego, but they are sponsored by Lego.
It's a youthful edge going on there.
Yeah, trying to keep it real.
Growing down.
Keeping it young for Zoe. Perhaps you're a skilled ventriloquist. You're a great storyteller. Or perhaps, as we've all learned going through COVID, we're just really good at being grown up. Sometimes it's just getting out of bed, and that's achievement for the day. Especially for me, putting pants on is a big thing. But you probably all have your own skills that you wish and hoped that everybody else around you would value. We didn't get stickers for ourselves.
I think we can riff, eh?
Yeah.
For example, I grew up with a sole parent, so it was just me and mum, which meant she would forget to make dinner because she's trying to work all the time, so I didn't actually learn cooking. But I did learn how to fend for myself, and I would love if that, growing up where I didn't have all of the household, so both parents there giving me all of that, emotional love, all of that trauma was actually able to be written in my CV. Managing, going through therapy, I went to Outward Bound. I've done all these sorts of self-work things that was catalyzed by the fact that I had to grow up really, really fast. I would love if people took that seriously and didn't just get awkward because it's like vulnerability time, but actually took that as like real world, real shit, and understood that and resonated with that.
And there's no YouTube then, right? Like, you can't YouTube out.
Exactly. I don't know what. I think I was actually trying to make sure my mum ate and was like fueled. I think that was my focus.
Like they grew up before iPhones were a thing. Is a badge.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Or for example, if you have heaps of siblings and they're crazy and you've got to manage them, right? That's like that's a product manager role right there, right there. You can make bank on that.
So we'll give you a couple of minutes. And what I want you to do is design your badge if you're artistic, or you could just write words on it. And then once you feel like you've crafted your masterpiece, I want you to turn to somebody next to you, or behind you, or in front of you, somebody who will listen to you, and explain your badge and why that makes you awesome. And we'll do this for a couple of minutes. Perhaps we could talk about other badges that we wish we had.
Should we walk around?
Yeah.
Other badges, like for me, Lego.
Yeah.
I'm an A for all as
Here
well.
we go. We got
My
badges.
husband.
Thank you.
Wow,
you go.
I've got
Oh,
it
wow,
on.
okay.
Awesome.
Thank you.
You called my bluff. I see many people starting to wear their badges with pride. Hopefully you've learnt something novel and interesting about the person next to you.
Millie. Come on. Patia! Lua Pati! Hey!
Oh!
There we go, Vaughan, I got you.
Thank you. I need to learn that teacher voice trick. Yeah. Maybe I could make that as one of my skills that I could learn. Maybe we could talk about a little bit about how we start to think about and value people as a whole. Because speaking to that gap before, we're more than the credential that we'd have on a piece of paper. And there's another thing that we talk about here in Aotearoa, which is around how our values are important to us. Why should we care about treating people as a whole package and our values? And why does that get relevant to us here in this room?
Alliv, you should go first, because Zoe and I can just... We're dangerous over here.
It is very important because whatever aspect in life you look into it, if you have a more diverse team or group of people in terms of problem solving or thinking or strategic planning, it helps you come up with the best solutions and the best results because you've already considered so many thoughts in that room. And it's not just one person's opinion on how to do things. And having more brains and minds working together actually solves the right problems, not just a problem or someone's main problem. It's everybody's problem that you're trying to solve. And that's very important. So whatever you're trying to do, whether it's a campaign or a project or a startup, having more diverse group of people in that room helps you come up with the best products and results.
What are some practical things that we can take away? Like I get the feeling the bell's about to ring and we need to let the class out to lunchtime. Perhaps we could start thinking about, it's not like people aren't doing things already in this space. Like there's internship programs and graduate programs and mentoring programs. Again, another loaded question. Is there enough of that stuff happening? And what could we be doing more?
Not enough, and also we need to know what else can we do. Because my opinion, like for us as employers, we want to know what could work for the next generation of youth who can come up and help us produce the best things or produce their own selves. We want to know what works for them so that we can make that happen. But again, we need more of that and know more of the new things that's coming up.
I think there's a lot of stuff happening, but like anything, that's a lot of noise. And I think as a community, we recognize what's performative, who's just trying to get brown people into a company so they can go after government funding now that the social procurement has changed and now they have to have representation numbers. Like we know what you're playing at when you just hire us as grads and never mobilize us up the ranks into leadership positions. We know what's happening when you just want us to talk on the diversity slide versus actually being strategic.
Photos on the website.
Oh, the photos on the website when HR comes in because you're in the office and they're like, oh, group photos. Like we know. So I think also, it's so funny, eh?
Diversity.
I think there's a lot of noise and a lot of stuff happening because it's now cool to sort of care to a certain degree. But so that's like can be so performative, and those are some of the easier tasks. The more critical conversations is how are we redistributing power? How are we demonstrating that we've got a dysfunctional system that is perpetuating inequities? How do we tackle some of those bigger conversations? And also, how do we allow the communities that are most impacted by this for them to be leading the conversations? Building power on the margin, again, is something that I'm really, really passionate about. And it's no longer about us wanting a seat at the table. We want to build our own tables, because if they are built by us, they're not even a damn table. Like in the Pacific community, it would be like a fala mat, it would be a waka, like it wouldn't be a table. So again, the shift of pipelining us into an existing dysfunctional system is not going to change the system. The system needs to see that a new system can be built, and different people need to be building that system.
All right, last word to Zoe.
Well, two things. One, you should give all your old computers and money, because money gets old real fast in your wallet, to Digitatua, so that we can get more devices to young people. And just riffing off Julia, like for a lot of us, our time in education, we didn't get a lot of education about this stuff. The Aotearoa Histories curricula is just being introduced now. For the first time, our young people are going to learn some of the hard truths about what colonization did in Aotearoa. And for many of us, our education system was hugely lacking in that space. We often get asked the question, like, when should we start looking at diversity in our workplaces? Do not wait till the first diverse person enters your small team of you and your like best mate who looks like you and went to the same school or uni as you. Do the mahi yourself before then, because no one will ever come into your workplace if you don't. And know that as this gets introduced to our more formal education system, there are going to be so many resources, incredible resources that you can access, that you can search for around learning about Aotearoa, around learning about Te Tiriti, learning the language of Te Reo. There's like so much out there now. And if you do anything, it's start your own journey for yourself, because it's not so much about the one thing you're doing now, but everything you do from now on. Get shaped by the choices you make about this stuff. And if you wait for someone else or some external factor, that's never going to come. There's always something else that's important in your time. So you make time for doing this, because that's how we have a not trash fire future, you know? Like that's how we as a society all move forward together in a way that is like that utopia we want to be in, not one that has us all sitting in the metaverse. Because that's not my vision of the future, you know? And if it's yours, that's cool, because that's happening anyway. But for the rest of us, that's still like walking on the beach in bare feet in like a pristine environment. We've got to do something different, you know? And we only do it with what we can do. So do what you can do to open your mind, and know that there's no whakamā in not having been taught it already, because for most of us, we weren't. We didn't have the privilege of it, and now we do. So like, take a little step, you know? Look it up, Google it.
Or take a real massive one if you want to. Take a big one.
Take a giant leap.
Totally all good if you want to take big steps.
Do a massive bomb off the edge of a cliff into
I'll be
the
right
space.
next to you if you want to take bold steps and be wearing all red suits and stuff.
Yeah.
So maybe on that note, also there's actually a larger problem set if we driven by the needs of a truly diverse community, right? So if you're sitting in the room and you're trying to think of your next idea of a startup, and you're thinking, damn, all the good SaaS ideas, point of sale, that's been done. We've run out of ideas. Well, you're wrong. It's like you're just looking in the wrong places. There's massive communities out there that you probably don't hear their voices just now, but they have problems that need solutions.
Yeah, soft materials, digital fashion product for high schools, that doesn't exist yet. Anyone's in the fashion area?
So there's more opportunities definitely for innovation, but also there's a much, much larger talent pool out there if only we looked harder. So thank you to the panelists. Thank you. That was an awesome session, if I may say.
Thank you, Vaughan.
And thank you all for indulging us.
You need to tell them they're dismissed. Dismissed.